Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I'm Tony Gerdeman, here sometimes with Kevin Noon. Kevin. How's it going?
It's going great. Not Tom. It's, big day, Ohio State adding to its recruiting class, and everybody is eager to see what the future of the Buckeyes is going to look like. And while maybe this is not the position that everybody's waiting to hear about, we know that every year is the year of the tight end.
Every year is the year of the tight end. Brody Lennon has announced his commitment to Ohio State today. Three-star tight end out of Gilmour Academy in Gates Mills, Ohio, Northeast Ohio. The number 30 tight end in the composite, the number 608 player overall, the second tight end in this class. And Kevin, when I look at his huddle, and I wrote up the story a couple days ago in preparation for this, and I'm watching him catch screens and run down the sideline, and it harkened back to a name that you'll be familiar with, Jake Stoneburner, a guy who had some pretty good wheels for a guy who was 6'4", 220, and ended up being one of the better tight ends to come through Ohio State. But he was a 4-star, 5-star kid for a while, Jake Stoneburner, way back in the day in the 2008 class. But a guy in Brody Lennon who has played, he plays some tight end, he'll play some receiver. A lot of times it's really difficult to recruit tight ends that only play tight ends in high school because those guys are usually defensive linemen or eventual offensive linemen. But Brody Lennon, I think a good number 2 here, and not number 2 in a secondary tight end, but a second tight end in this class to round out what is looking like a pretty decent class so far.
Yeah, you have to be happy with the effort of Keenan Bailey of assembling this class with Lennon and with Nate Roberts. 6'4", 220 is what Lennon is listed as. I've worked in the recruiting game a long time. I never really trust weight until I actually see a kid in person. Things can fluctuate. I mean, you wouldn't necessarily think about 6'4", 220 being an attached tight end, maybe more of a flex. You mentioned that he could maybe see some receiver. Demarion Witten is somebody that's not necessarily a true tight end body either. So that's kind of where I'm looking at this. But you got 20 offers. He took official visits to Kentucky, Wisconsin, Missouri, and of course to Ohio State. So all of that is, important. I think that this is a really good get, as Ohio State's tight end room is kind of in flux. We're getting to the end of G. Scott Jr.'s run. I mean, he probably should have his doctorate by now. It feels like he's been there for a long time. You go to the portal, they get Will Kasmerick out of from OU. And then names have kind of been dropping out of the class. I mean, they still have Bennett Christian, but I think that the 1-2 punch with Roberts is about as good as that, as you could really ask for. I mean, and we're going to talk about defensive line, not today, we're not, but we're talking about defensive line. We're going to talk about offensive line. Lord knows we're going to talk about receiver, not like Ohio State has a lot of good ones right now, but these tight ends are going to be important for whoever it may be in the future, be it Julian Sayin or Aaron Noland or Tavian St. Clair.
I'm trying to look back to the last time Ohio State signed 2 tight ends in the same class, and I'm not considering last year or this year, the 2024 class, as one of those, because I think Demarion Witten starts out at wide receiver, and we'll see if he stays there. Maybe you can count it eventually as a 2 tight end class. But I think you might have to go back to Jake Hausman and Luke Farrell in, was that 2015, 2016, something like that. And you're right, the tight end room has been thin. They lose Joe Royer to transfer, lose Sam Hart to transfer. Like, they've not gotten a lot out of the guys that they've brought in. So at some point, you're going to increase your odds if you bring in more than one. I think pretty safe to say they've capped it at 2, though. I'm not sure. Keenan Bailey, everybody loves him at Ohio State. I don't think he has enough pull to make this a 3 tight end class. And I don't know that they're in on somebody like the number 1 tight end in the nation who would be like, I want to come aboard. And you're just like, okay, thank you, sir. May we have another. So I think you're pretty set there. And now you can start working on the 2026 class. And we saw a bunch of tight ends this June at camps. Ohio State was looking at 26, 20, 25s. And they've had a good group in there. They've got some guys, and when you look at the Nate Roberts, a little bit maybe heavier than than Brody Lennon, but I think similar guys. And in the offense anymore, like it's really hard to just go get a stay-at-home tight end. They're not a lot out there. And if you look at the draft, you look at Georgia did fine without without a guy that just stays on the line the entire time. I wonder if we'll ever get back to that. But you've eventually got to be able to stay on the line and be able to block. And so, you can bring in these guys that they play some receiver, but they play some tight end. They have to have that experience tight end, or else it takes so long for them to develop.
I think, too, we've also seen Ohio State get away from the mobile quarterback. Even when it had a mobile quarterback in Justin Fields, he wasn't a mobile quarterback because the difference from QB1 to QB2 was pretty dramatic, and they didn't want to get QB1 murdered out there running the ball. But if Ohio State, in fact, is moving more toward a mobile quarterback attack, and I'm not saying to like Urban Meyer era, we're just going to run the quarterback all the time, you're probably going to want to have a tight end out there. I mean, Ohio State does play a lot of 12 personnel too, one back, two tights. So you're going to need to have some options out there. And I talked about earlier, G. Scott being toward the end of his career, Tony's favorite player, Patrick Gerd, has got to be coming close to the end of his career as well. So it's going to be very important for Ohio State to have tight ends that are able to be attached to the line and be key blockers. I mean, obviously, the pass catching ability of Cade Stover was very important for Ohio State last year with a first-year starter in Kyle McCord, who's now obviously at Syracuse, having kind of that safety net, having that outlet there. But I think that these guys are going to add to the future growth of this offense as we see it. In my mind, I think we're going to see much more of a balanced offense. I think I think we've seen years where it's been super pass heavy. Certainly going years back, it'd been super run heavy. Is this going to be the year that it's going to be closest to 50-50? I guess we'll have to kind of wait and see. New commit Brody Lennon's going to have to watch that from Gates Mills, Ohio, up outside of Cleveland, because he's got one more year of high school at the Gilmour Academy. But again, I just think that Ohio State has done a great job here. It really seemed like that Nate Roberts was like the main focus, the first guy they wanted to go after. And then they kind of had to like reshuffle the deck a little bit. And I think Brody Lennon should not be looked at as a throw-in. And I know there will be people, 3-star heaven. We hear that on message boards all the time, but Brody Lennon, watch the huddle tape. He's impressive. He's impressive. And, is he somebody that's going to come in and start as a true freshman? I'm going to venture and say no. But I think he's going to be pretty good.
Well, I mean, even the top-ranked guys, like Jelani Thurman, was like the number 5 tight end. He redshirted last year. So he played, but he didn't play. He played 4 regular season games and then started in the bowl game and still redshirted. So there's only you're never really going to get much out of a true freshman. And I was talking with Tom about this, and Tom is on assignment. Don't worry about him. It's not important. But I was talking with him a couple days ago about the true freshman tight ends at Ohio State over the last 20 years. Do you know what the season high in receptions for a true freshman tight end is in the past 20 years? And I will give you a hint. It was 20 years ago.
11.
3 from Rory Nickel. Jelani Thurman had 2 last year. So you're not going to don't ever expect much from a true freshman tight end. And, Jeremy Ruckert, I think, had 2 as a true freshman coming in as a 5-star. So it's a very difficult position to play. As Ryan Day says, you have to be a wide receiver that can get open against the corner. And you also have to be a left tackle that can block a defensive end. That's not a thing that is very easy to do, especially for guys who play a lot of receiver in high school and only play some tight end. But you've got 2 guys in here that have bigger bodies and can develop, and that's what they will have to do. I will say I really like Max LeBlanc. I did a piece on him this week at BuckeyeHuddle.com, closer look, looking at some of his senior highlights, his senior huddle video, and physical guy that has actually played some tight end, and so has Brody Lennon. So as Nate Roberts. I will also add, Kevin, whenever Ohio State lands a receiver who is like 6'4" or above, people automatically ask, can he grow into a tight end? Is he going to be a tight end? And they're asking that about Bod Penn Miller. No, that he's going to stay a receiver. And the same thing with Chris Henry. I don't care if he ends up being 6'10". He's going to stay at receiver. Not everybody that is over 6'4" has to grow into a tight end, unless you're like G. Scott. You just keep getting bigger, and you're fighting every day to stay at 225. It's a battle that many of us lose.
And there are plenty of tight ends that everybody asks, will they grow into a left tackle? So everybody is constantly being assigned one spot down the line. I mean, so it kind of is what it is. But I agree. Chris Henry Jr. is not a tight end. Bod Penn Miller is not a tight end. Nate Roberts, yes. Brody Lennon, yes. Both of them are going to have a big learning curve when they get to Ohio State. And the good news is that you can always go out into the portal and get somebody to kind of help there if Bennett Christian isn't able to break through, if Jelani Thurman isn't able to break through yet. I have a sneaking suspicion that we're going to see a pretty nice advancement from Jelani this year. That is just, I've not seen anything specifically. I've not been told anything specifically. I just think this is going to be the year. I talked to a dad of another player who plays at Langston Hughes High School now, where Jelani came out of, and he just gushed and gushed and gushed about him. So maybe I've been influenced by that. I don't know.
So this is now 20 commits for Ohio State. I still think they should go to 30. Just push it. Keep going until there's nobody left. Ryan Day probably won't. I don't know. Where are you putting this class? 26, 27?
28 or 29. 28 or 29 is where I see it. I mean, let's remember, Ohio State is going to go into this season under 85. Mm-hmm. We already know that. And they could get to 85 with deserving walk-ons, getting a one-year scholarship, and that's fine. That's fine. But when it comes to the true scholarship count, they're going in sub 85. They are going to have a huge glut of draft-eligible players coming out of this season. And if Ohio State is as good as we think they may be, and they play all the way through and hoist a trophy at the very end, you may see some players that have draft decisions say, I got what I'm here for. I got my degree in hand. I got a championship. They're going to push the boundaries really high, because the thing is I could count 4 or 5 defensive linemen, and we're just talking about one positional group that they're still really in on, and I think they would take all of them. So if that got them to 25, you need more offensive line. You need more receiver. They only have 2 receivers. You kind of keep going and going and going. You, of course, can't forget about Dorian Brew. You got to get Dorian Brew in the class somehow. So it honestly, the 30 may not be really as far-fetched as you even thought of when you first started putting the thought together. I think that could be true.
Going to start putting in like a Houston Nut 38 back in the day at Arkansas or wherever, and, you've only got room for 19 and it doesn't matter, and oversigning was a huge thing back then. But now with the transient nature of football teams, you bring them in and it'll shake itself out, because we always talk about how you never want to be under 85. They're under 85, like you said, and Ryan Day doesn't seem too concerned. So, they've
the 82 that they have are really freaking good.
Yeah,
so.
That helps. That helps. And then you've got some guys that you can reward, or a couple of punters that you put on scholarship. Who knows? But so there you go. Up to 20 now with the commitment of Brody Lennon, 3-star tight end out of Northeast Ohio, adds to Ohio State's 2 tight end class. We think they're going to cap it there. No more tight ends for Keenan Bailey, but 2 guys that can develop and give them what they need in terms of the pass catching, but also they're definitely going to need to bone up on the run blocking, as we know. So that will do it. Kevin, thank you. Everybody out there, thank you. Reminder to go ahead and hit the thumbs up on this if you're watching on YouTube, and always find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Become a member if you have not yet. We'd appreciate you seeing you there. So check us out, and we will thank you all and talk to you guys later.